if seeing and hearing is no longer believing, we have a big challenge. And with these kind of imposters, this kind of deep fakes, this can be done in real time. It can be real time deep fakes where you and I have a conversation in the metaverse, and I am not who I say I am, but I might be someone else.
You would be amazed how much quality collective thought can be captured using two simple tools: a voice connection and a shared screen. Well, that was Jason's fright, but is that all that we will need? Going into the future, where will we go? Well, today I'm speaking to another man who thinks exponentially, the digital speaker, Dr. Rijmenam. He's a future technology strategist. That's someone that looks at the technology and how it will impact our organizations and our society. In his latest book, Step into the Metaverse, he takes an incisive look at the future of the internet. During our conversation, we discuss how the metaverse will impact our personal and our private lives. What if our personal data is not just our name and surname anymore, not our email address and our address, but what if that included the way we look? What kind of new definitions will we need for personal data? We talk about the immersive nature of this metaverse and how that can affect our very human mind and experience. We all know how identity and identity expression is an important topic at the moment within organizations. What we discuss is how the metaverse could actually lead to an explosion of identities. We also talk about the potential impact on young children. What if this virtual reality, this virtual systems that we create become so commonplace that we live there? How will that impact the way that children then grow their minds? Well, we touch on some social issues as well, such as class and healthcare, access to the metaverse, and what that could mean for medical care. What will it mean for mental health care? And whose responsibility will it be to police these virtual worlds? Will there be legislation to mitigate potential negative impact on mental health? We close by thinking about how it would be talking to your digital twin. Can you imagine that? Having a conversation with someone that looks like you? But what if it became a deep fake? What if you could not see the difference? What if others couldn't? What is the potential in this new digital metaverse? So, Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Exene. Great to be here.
And we've been talking a little bit beforehand, and one of the things is you've written a new book. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I've written my fourth book, which is called Step into the Metaverse. And it's really about the hype of today, the Metaverse. What is it? How will it change our lives? How will it change society? How should we create an open Metaverse that's there for us? What are the dangers of the Metaverse? How can we make money in the Metaverse? Very important question, of course. Anything related to Metaverse. And I've gone through it down the rabbit hole for this book. I interviewed about 100 people in the field. I did a survey about 150 people. So I really involved the entire Metaverse community to gain a better understanding of what's happening in the space. What is the Metaverse, or what can the Metaverse be? Because the Metaverse doesn't really exist yet. How will it change our lives?
I wonder, we're talking about Metaverse. Is that something to do with what Facebook is doing with their new Meta branding?
I'm afraid so. I have to give a small disclaimer that I'm not a big fan of Mr. Zuckerberg. That's an understatement. Obviously, he tries to create a metaverse, an immersive world where we live and spend our money and collect and gather our data for him in his world. He did one thing right when he announced his rebranding to Meta in October, and that's he sort of kickstarted the entire story around the the metaverse and what it is and what it can be, so that everyone wants to know at the moment what it is and how it's going to affect the organization, how it's going to affect society, Meta is part of the metaverse. Hopefully, he will never be the metaverse, because I think then we have a serious problem as society.
I think it's for the listeners. Yes, that I live in the Netherlands, and Mark is born and raised in the Netherlands. So we're in the Netherlands. We're a bit paranoid about privacy and personal data and all the things that has to do with what is mine and what you're allowed to take from me without my permission. So yes, things like Facebook and any other social media platform tends to get scrutinied a lot by people in the Netherlands, more I think than in a lot of other societies. Maybe Germany.
Probably, but I think everyone should be like that. I would say, because data is the most important resource of tomorrow, of today already, especially but tomorrow, when the metaverse enables organizations to collect 10 to 100 times more data than they can do today. So it's really something that we should be very protective about, and that we should not give it away without thinking about it to organizations who use and abuse it for all kinds of things. That I'm very strong about this, that we really have to be careful about that.
What is the alternative? If we don't have the Zuckerbergs of the world coming up with the metaverse, what are the alternatives?
Well, the alternative is an open metaverse, where which is a decentralized metaverse, where you own your data. You own your digital assets and you own your identity, and you determine who gets access to your data. You decide how an organization can use your data, and if you don't want to be associated with an organization anymore, you can just take away your data, and they have to accept that, because the data is yours. And that's not the case at the moment. At the moment, the data is theirs, and you can close your account, but they still have your data. It's not that they will delete your data. They should, but they don't. So from that perspective, we should move to a metaverse which enables users to take back control and to move their assets from one platform to another. If we would compare it to the current Web 2, that would mean that you can take all your data from Facebook, you can take all your photos, all your friends and everything, and you can just move it to, I don't know, Twitter or for that matter. And you can just continue where you left off. Or it would mean that you could send a text message from WhatsApp to Signal, and you could read it just like you can with email. I can send you an email from my Gmail to your Outlook or Yahoo or whatever you have, that interoperability, that is what empowers users, and we need to be able to have that. And that's the open metaverse, and there are a lot of people working on it very hard, especially all the startups, or the new younger generations are working, because they are a lot more conscious about this, about being protective about the data, and that we need to be in control of our data and assets. So from that perspective, there is hope, but there's a lot of work to be done. But there's certainly a possibility that we could end up, hopefully, in the utopia, which is a decentralized metaverse where we own our own data and not big tech or governments.
That also sounds to me like it's not only your data, but also your followership would be transplantable. So if you have a bunch of followers on TikTok, whatever is the next big thing, you'll just step over and take everybody with.
Well, that would be, of course, the ideal situation. And then it's up to the platforms to deliver the best experience so that you don't do that. I think that's where we want to go. But there's a long way to get there.
So what would be the role of things like, not Bitcoin, but sort of like non-fungible tokens, or trackable transactions in this?
Well, non-fungible tokens, or NFTs for the listeners, are crucial. Not so much to sell or to buy a JPEG for tens of millions of dollars. That's nice for them if you're able to sell it for that much money. But as a buyer, you don't really buy anything. You buy an image which is hosted somewhere, and if it's not hosted decentralized, it can be removed by someone else, and then you just pay tens of millions of dollars for basically nothing. But more importantly, because it can prove ownership. ownership of a digital asset, whether that's a JPEG that you paid 10 millions for, tens of millions for it, or whether that's a digital dress or digital jacket for your avatar, or whether that's a digital wearable for your avatar, or whatsoever, so that you can take that with you from one platform to another platform, and you can use it, and it can grow in value. It's similar, like if you buy jeans in the real world, you can use it to multiple bars and to multiple restaurants. It's not that you have to buy a different pair of jeans for every bar that you go to. Would be quite expensive. So in the physical world, we have enabled this interoperability quite well, because you can buy one pair of jeans and you can wear it wherever you want to go. That same concept should be moved to the metaverse, so that you can buy one digital pair of jeans and wear it in Roblox, wear it in Fortnite, wear it in Decentraland, wear it in Minecraft, or wear it in whatever other platforms yet to be invented, and that's sort of what we need to do, where we need to go to.
Okay, so if we look at most laws in the world, especially things that's the derivatives of Dutch Roman law or even French Code Civil, it has to do with ownership. I own my life and I own my stuff. So NFTs are basically a way for us to own stuff in the digital space. So,
correct. Yeah.
And then whatever we use to pay for it, whatever digital currency, be it Bitcoin or anything else. But what are the fears for this? Because, I mean, it sounds like there could be a lot of problems, not just on data ownership and digital ownership, but people taking advantage of.
Well, there are tons of challenges with the metaverse, as same as there are tons of challenges with the NFTs at the moment. NFTs are being hacked. We have plagiarism. We have scams. We have imposters. We have, you name it, it's happening at the moment. Data breaches, people's wallets being drained, etc. So there are tons of challenges for when it comes to NFTs, but even more when it comes to the metaverse. Basically, what you can think of, anything that you can, all the problems that we see in Web 2 will be extrapolated in Web3, in the metaverse. So abuse, harassment will get worse. Fake news will get worse. Deep fakes will get worse. Bots and trolls will get worse. And that's a serious problem. There's already tons of news about women being harassed and sexually abused in the metaverse. And the scary thing is that people often think, but that's digital, who cares? And, don't be so difficult or whatever, those kind of things that you hear sometimes. But it's for our brain, if the virtual reality is good enough, your brain can't differentiate between simulation and reality. So if you are being groped as a woman in the virtual reality, to you it feels as real, as really happening to you. So that's horrible, and there's very little that platforms do about it at the moment, or that can be done. And so Meta introduced now by default, a minimum 4 feet distance, or social distancing in the metaverse, which is good that they did that after they made a few mistakes, and it's unfortunately very much necessary, because there are countless examples of women entering a first-person shooter or virtual or VR room or whatsoever, and within minutes being sexually harassed by other, mostly men, I assume, in the metaverse. So that's one challenge. Another challenge is imposter avatars, deep fakes, real-time deep fakes. Deep fakes is a problem. It's not being exploited as badly as it can be, fortunately. But I am currently building a digital human of myself, which is an exact replica of me. But then digital in super high quality, so you can really zoom in and see all parts of my face, of my body, and I can use that to move around and to give keynotes in the metaverse, etc. But if I can do it, you can do it too for me, XT. So you can create a digital human on my behalf without me knowing it, and with this podcast recording, you have my voice, so you can clone my voice, and you can be me in the metaverse. So you can pretend to be me, and if there's no way to verify that I am not me, or I am me in the metaverse. This can get very confusing very quickly, by the way. Then you have a problem. But then NFTs come into play there, because you can use that to verify that you own the digital, the private key, which is linked to my digital human, so that you can, so that avatar that looks like me, that sounds like me, is indeed me. But then my computer can get hacked, my wallet can get hacked, and then you have the verification that me is me, but then me is not me because me is someone else.
Mm.
And then you need to maybe link it to biometrics, so you can link it to your iris scan, or you can link it to your heart rhythm or your gait. There are all kinds of ways that you can have an individual biometrical signal, but that can be hacked too. So then it becomes very, very difficult to determine if this person is who he says he is. And for me, that would be annoying if that happens. But if you are the CEO of a large stock listed company, it will be problematic. Or if you are the president of a country, it can be dangerous. It can cost lives. This can get really, really realistic. There's a demo being done by Epic Games and Warner Bros. For the movie The Matrix, the recent movie. And in this demo that they made with Unreal Engine 5, they recreated Keanu Reeves, and they recreated the entire world that they created in digital format. There's nothing real in that game, and they made a movie from that game. And that's super scary if you think about it, because if anyone can do that. Of course, at the moment you need still 100, 200 people to do so, but in time that will become easier. And if we're no longer able to determine that, if seeing and hearing is no longer believing, we have a big challenge. And with these kind of imposters, this kind of deep fakes, this can be done in real time. It can be real time deep fakes where you and I have a conversation in the metaverse, and I am not who I say I am, but I might be someone else. And that's pretty scary. But let's keep it.
No. It's good to be talking about this. I mean, I've been a gamer since. I was knee high to a grasshopper. I think the first online for me was Ultima. So actually, before that, I played in MUDs when I was in my late teens, early 20s.
Nice.
So it's like I've been around in this online world for way too long. And I think the simple question is then, why would we want to go there? Why would we want to live in a metaverse if we can live in a real one?
Well, first of all, we can't stop it. It's not that you can stop everyone in the world to stop building the metaverse. So you can't stop technology being continuously developed. So it's not that we can stop it. And there are also countless benefits of the metaverse. It can make the world more efficient, more fun. We can collaborate across the globe. We can have truly out of this world, unique experiences. We can have a completely different way of working, of connecting with people, socializing, playing, etc. So it brings tons of things to us as humans, to society. It will change what it means to be human. It will change our identity. It will change how we run society. It might even change, how we run the world. Nation states disappearing because people have more loyalty to a certain virtual world than to a physical country, which is a made-up construct anyhow. But so there are all kinds of things that can happen here.
So the one thing that I'm still sort of concerned about this is, except for the stuff we've talked about, is that here you can, for instance, see that I'm furrowing my brow. You can see I have a quizzical expression on my face. But avatars don't allow that yet. Do you think that's something that's going to come anytime soon?
It's already there. You have already VR headsets that allow you to have full tracking of your face while wearing a headset, full eye tracking. So all the movements that I have in my face at the moment, also the very minuscule non-verbal movements, can be translated to your avatar. The technology is good, not good enough. And give it another couple of years, and it will be perfect. And you will not, it will mimic exactly your movements, the little twitch, whatever you have, can be mimicked and copied to the metaverse.
It's actually going to make a big difference. I think one of the things that, some of the benefits I can think of is when you're look at the work that Baron Cohen is doing in the UK. Sir Baron Cohen, he is now used to be professor only, and he works with people with autism. Now, imagine if you do not have the ability to read other people's emotions, and you can be in a metaverse, and you just get a label flashing on the screen telling you, or in your viewfinder, that says, "This is the emotion the person is feeling at the moment." Obviously, they'll
Yeah,
have to switch it on and allow you, because that's their data again, I assume.
you would hope so.
Um,
That you would have to give permission to that. But yes,
but it's again, the other thing is, how do you create teams? How do you create virtual teams that get to know each other? Because I mean, we do a lot with body language and facial expression. For instance, I'm I mean, you're in a really hot place at the moment, and I'm in a really cold place. But you being in Australia with lovely sunshine and warm even in the evenings, and I'm sitting here in relative cold, but I'm also a lot chubbier than the average, especially in the Netherlands. So if I go into a virtual world, I like to not be that chubby, so I don't sort of go for the orc look on any of the MMOs or games. I tend to go for like, yeah, okay, sort of 40s, also lying a little bit about the age,
the
so
the,
make
the
myself a little
night.
bit 10 years younger with all the creases and stuff that's currently filled with my own fat, not with injectables. And then, yeah, that's the body that I create on there, because this is a warrior, so he has to be muscular, and this is a wizard, this has to be lanky. So play very various characters, but what we see will not be who we are anymore.
You can be who you want to be, and I foresee a Cambrian explosion of identity, because you can be an orc, you can be a knight, you can be a flying purple centaur if you want to be, literally, or you can be Todd from Mario Kart, or Bowser. You can literally be whoever you want or whatever you want to be. And you can play with that, and because research has shown that if you're introvert and you use an extrovert character, for example, a tall and strong character, that the behavior of that extrovert behavior in the digital world continues in the physical world. Fascinating research.
Mm,
And so you can play around with your character traits. You can play around with who you want to be, and in which environment you want to be, who you want to be, how
mm,
you want to dress. If you want to wear 10-inch high heels as a man, you can.
mm,
It's all possible. Or as a flying centaur, it's also possible. Literally anything that you can think of, if you can think of it, you can create it and you can be it. And I
mm,
think that's just absolutely fascinating to see what is going to happen if we humans can let our identity just flourish and just explode. And yeah, at the moment that's not really possible. Yeah, there are people who go the extra mile with their identity and do all kinds of cool stuff with their identity. But for most people, they don't. They are who they are, and they form within the sort of a, how do you say it, a barrier, or sort of
mm,
a sort of area of what is considered being normal. Then
mm,
the question is, of course, what is normal, but that's different. Um, uh, and within the metaverse, that's no longer necessary. You can
mm,
literally be whoever you want to be. And if you want to switch, if you don't like your identity anymore, with a click of the button, you switch your identity.
yeah.
And I think that's fascinating. And maybe it becomes possible that you can sell your identity because you're fed up with it. You have this flying centaur, and then you decide, "Oh, I get rid of it, so I'm going to sell this beautiful flying centaur." But what happens then? Are you going to regret it? Is some of that, if someone else sees that identity, then how will they respond? I thought you
Mm,
were Extine. Well, no, I'm not Extine anymore. I'm not. I'm someone totally different.
mm, mm.
All possible. Fascinating stuff.
I agree with you. It's fascinating, because I spoke to Jackie Handy on another podcast, and we talked about sex, the difference between sex and gender identity, and then gender expression. At the moment, leadership and companies are battling to just deal with two sexes, right, that are expressed on a spectrum on gender identity. I mean, it's just two sides, and everything in between. And sort of, let's say, in the middle you have, let's say, don't care, either way, and then on the sides you've got the extremes, and either man or woman, and that is already a challenge for people going, what kind of label do I put on that?
Well, luckily we don't need any toilets in the metaverse, so we don't need like 5 different toilets
Oh God,
for
yeah.
this. So.
Don't get me started on this on the inaneness of that conversation. It's but imagine. I was thinking, as a leader in a metaverse where I was thinking you're going to get your IT guys together today. We're going to talk. We're having a Scrum meeting in the morning, and we're going to talk about what are we going to do today. And one is a butterfly, the other one is a centaur. There's an angel standing there with a sword. There's let's say, a half orc over there flexing his pecs. You're like, how are you going to?
But that can be awesome for creativity. Can you imagine?
Following day, it's completely different again. So it's going to be interesting to look at what are we as humans going to look for as common denominators to build our team identities.
Well, what I expect to happen, and this is of course based on very early and based on all the talks that I've done for my book and all the research that I've done, but it's very very early because we're just literally at the start of all this. But what I can expect to happen, what I think to happen, is that people will try it at first, all kinds of identities. They will play around and they will maybe 10, 15, 20 different types of identities. But at some point they will filter out. They will get favorites, and they will end up with 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 main identities that they use for different communities. So if you go to your friends, you might appear as a flying centaur. If you go to your work, you might appear as a formal businessman or woman. Or if you go to, I don't know, play music, you might appear as a cello. Everything is possible, and I wouldn't surprise if that is. If that's what's going to happen, and then you have your main identity, and then you can change your identity by different digital fashion, different hairstyle, but your character, your avatar, sort of stays the same. But this is a feeling that I have. This is of course not based on any research because there is none. But I would not be surprised if we are able to create this open, interoperable metaverse where you can take your identities from one platform to another, that will happen. And I think, that would be absolutely fascinating to see how that will impact society, how it will impact as teams, as you mentioned, and how it will impact identity and what it means to be human. I'm very excited about that.
I think what just struck me is in the Netherlands we have certain legal requirements on companies and what companies can provide you funding for and not. And I'm wondering what will be the dress code, for business. Will there be a set of what you have to wear, not what you're not allowed to wear, but what you have to wear? Because the moment we say that under Dutch law, that becomes a uniform, and the moment you say uniform, you have to subsidize it by law. This is this is going to be an interesting one. Sort of, you're only allowed to shop at Tommy Hilfiger and Boss online, and here's your company credit card, and go buy your face from them too, because those are the only your face and body, because those are the only ones to be corporately approved. I mean,
that would be interesting. I doubt it. I think what will happen is that certain communities will allow access to certain would allow certain identities. If you enter the Walt Disney metaverse, the Walt Disney virtual environment, I can be pretty certain that they won't allow you to show up as a Nazi. within the virtual world. Just like they won't allow you to do that in the real world. They won't let you into the park if you would show up like that. So these different communities, different virtual worlds, different experiences, they will have their own rules, and offices will also have their own rules. You might have advertising agencies that embrace this creativity and say you can show up as whatever you want to be, and you might have very a formal organization who said no, you have to show up as a businessman or women. Whatever the company decides what the rules are for their virtual rules, that will what be the rules will be for that particular community, that particular organization, and how that will pan out, no idea. But yeah, if you then prefer to work for an organization that allows you to be whoever you want to be, and you can fly, you can show up as a butterfly, you might resign from one company to go work for a company that does allow you that.
I also think that there's a few interesting things. The one is that if we are, as humans, part of our development cycle, from kids onwards, from babies and onwards, we learn a few things. Our brains are geared to learn things, and one of those things is facial expressions. To see how other people feel about you, because that's part of how we modify our behavior. One of the reasons why online at the moment things are going so nuts, I believe, and in the world, is that we cannot see those people's facial expressions anymore. What I think is going to be interesting is to see what happens when we as humans have a new impact on the development cycle. So from babies all the way through to young adults, we learn things like, amongst other things, reading other people's facial expressions. I wonder how that will be affected in this new world, and will some of those skills not be developed? So that we start our brains attached to different things to determine if we belong.
Yeah, it could very well be the case. And at the moment, research or organizations suggest not to give a VR headset to children under 13, and because their brains are still very in development. But why is that? We don't really know. We know that putting a VR headset on those young children will likely have an effect on their brain development. But will that be positive or will that be negative? Um, humans are made for 3D environments. We're not made for 2D environment for screens. Maybe putting a child into a virtual environment that's made for children could stimulate certain other parts of the brains that we don't even know. And this is, of course, very much unknown, because there hasn't been much research, and but it could be the case. It could be the case that might change how our brain works, and it might change for the better. It doesn't necessarily have to change for the worst, for a worse outcome. So I think if I wouldn't necessarily put my 2-year-old in virtual reality, and so from that perspective, I can imagine that children can still learn those facial expressions, those cues, but what the impact of virtual reality will be on brains that are still under construction, so to say, is uncertain, and it doesn't necessarily have to be bad.
I'm just thinking, talking about children, one thing in the Netherlands that I also saw, which was really heartwarming, is the amount of dads that are really involved with their children. We sort of have the same Papa Dag, sort of like you hear that a lot anywhere else in the world, or Daddy Day, and which a dad will take one day in a week and just spend with his children. And it's and there's a lot of stay-at-home dads, which is also something that a lot of other societies do not necessarily have. So I know dads, or some of the friends I have, my buddies take their children to play groups where they go to the park with a few other dads and kids, and they all go play together. And I can imagine that sort of supervised playtime in a digital world can open you to completely new cultures and new countries, never mind just the local play group.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that yeah, the metaverse, yeah, with all its challenges and all its dangers lurking around in the corners of the metaverse, it also can have, yeah, significant positive effect on society and on individuals and on, yeah, maybe even on our children.
There's one thing that I've seen now that's been a problem in companies, in my view anyway, is that in between the ages of 18 and 25, it's normally when we have our first jobs, um, just out of high school or just out of university. Those are the times we learn about intimacy. And in the current world we live in, it's been very difficult for people that in that age group to really have intimate conversations or intimate relationships. I mean, that's one side of it. But the other thing is also about friendship. It's also about vulnerability, a certain amount of authenticity. So I'm just thinking, what would that mean in a digital world? Because what I've seen is that there's, for instance, one of the games that I play, or I've played a few in my life, the biggest issue is normally that I found is let's say there's guilds, so there's these groupings within games, just for people that don't know, and you need to exclude certain people in those groups for basically for legal reasons, because if a bunch of 40-year-old men are sitting around playing a game, they have their own way of communicating, which can be extremely rude and crude, you know. And it's you don't want to expose somebody that's 16 years old or 13-year-olds to that, you know. And so that's just the age difference. I mean, then you get gender differences. With the online gaming community tends to be much more male orientated than female, just like society in general. And so the avatars in games are not an indication of the gender of the person playing.
Yeah.
And so when we take that sort of work into a work environment, I wonder what that's going to mean for onboarding. You know, how do we get people in that early part of their 20s onboarded and understanding how a company works? If the diversity between companies are going to be that big, will you only ever work for one? You know?
Well, it's an interesting question that you pose, and I think, those kids that are, Generation Z and Generation Alpha, which is 2010 till now, the latest generation. They are the metaverse natives, so to say. So they've grown up with Roblox. They've grown up with, these with Fortnite and with these games. They're Generation Z that has they have friends all over the world from an early age on. They learn a new language just by playing Fortnite, because that's what, your friends. If your friends speak French and you don't speak French, well, you better learn French because you want to be part of that group. And so, from that perspective, I think that can be really interesting. And then now imagine that these are the people who then enter the workforce 10 years, 5 years from now. They have a completely different perspective on the world. They have a completely different perspective on organizations. They are for sure not going to work from 9 to 5 in a cubicle in an office warehouse somewhere in a dark area of the world. Um, uh, they look at this kind of thing completely different. And organizations will have to adapt to that, because otherwise they will lose out. Otherwise, Generation Alpha is not going to work for these companies, or Generation Z. So we'll see that organizations will adapt to that, because they will have to. And when it comes to, onboarding or even hiring in the metaverse, it also can have advantages, because if you show up as a flying centaur, you're not being biased, because you're because of your race or because of your religion or because of your gender. You just are a flying centaur, a green flying centaur, and that might also help in getting rid of some of that higher hiring biases that we have in the world. So from that perspective, it could actually be a positive thing for the workforce.
I think what it also makes me question some of the stuff that we're doing at the moment. You know, if we look at leadership development programs being taught at business schools, there's a big focus on who am I as a leader and self-reflection. That's I think which is a core element of any leader is ability to self-reflect. The next thing, however, is we're taught to engage with people in a certain way. And in the metaverse, that's changing. I mean, even now with COVID, only when people went more online, there's been really weird statistics coming out of that. One is we're looking at some of the people that are working alone at home. They don't have family members at home, so they tend to be alone. And some of the research showing that they show the same type of symptoms, especially people that are in isolation, even older people. They showed that they have similar symptoms to prisons that are locked up in isolation. So
Wow.
their ability to social interact is starting to change after about 3 months, and after 6 months, some of those changes in the brain are permanent.
Wow.
Okay. So that's one side of a concern. The other side of it is you still have your social interaction, even if it's with your wife, husband, kids, partner. And then you still stay within that social ability, the ability to recognize facial features and recognize emotions and modify your behavior. Because people that do not have that control mechanism don't modify their behavior necessarily. And that's something we learn. So when we go into a world where everybody's working remotely and everybody's only present in an avatar, I wonder how you lead. Some of the stuff that we're teaching at the moment really, I think, will work well in that, because some of the stuff I developed was basically out of gaming.
Hmm.
Because how do you lead a guild if of 200-300 people if it's just a bunch of really nasty people together? You can't. So you start looking at personality traits, you're looking at personality types, you're looking at people that work well together or don't work well together. And so your hiring and firing cycle in a game is as easy as you're banned from the guild. There's no financial repercussions, there's no
Yeah.
legal repercussions, all these kind of things. How does that now work in a metaverse? I can just, I think it's going to be an exciting time to develop new leadership
Oh yeah,
programs.
for sure. And definitely, and uh, so many things will change, and not necessarily in the next 3 to 5 years. Because the metaverse is still very much in development. But towards the end of this decade, which is only 8 years away, mind you, we will live in a different society where it might be normal that part of your employees are wherever in the world, and you have hybrid meetings where those people who are in the office up here go to the office. Those people who are remote, they join in virtual reality. The avatars of those joining in virtual reality are projected as holograms in the meeting room, either through AR glasses or some other projection. And the avatars of the people meeting physically are projected in virtual reality as avatars. All hyper realistic, all with facial expression tracking, all with eye tracking and motion tracking and everything. So the difference between the virtual and the physical world, the lines are starting to blur then, because but it looks the same. It looks exactly the same. And of course, this is far away. This is maybe at least I would say not before the end of this decade. But that's where we're going to, where you have these hybrid meetings where it really doesn't really matter anymore where you are, and you could even meet up at the water cooler, as one as physical and one as an avatar. Uh, and having the necessary office gossip at a virtual slash physical water cooler. It might very well be possible. So it's yeah, and then so the world is going to change, and it will change really fast. Especially with all the convergence of the different technologies that we're seeing at the moment. It's not just VR, it's not just AR, it's also artificial intelligence, it's also quantum computing. And all these
Yeah.
technologies are coming together at the moment. We are at this inflection point, at the curve of the hockey stick, and we're about to shoot out to a future unknown. All these technologies are influencing each other. Our AI becomes better because of the data that we collect, that allows us to create better apps and faster quantum computers that will improve our AI, that will help us solve all world problems, and make these kind of realities that I describe a possibility within the decade. So this will change, and there are people who research who says the metaverse will create drive $1 trillion of economic growth by 2030, trillion and a half. I even think that's an underestimate. I think it will be $15 trillion, $20 trillion. If you look at how the internet, the impact the internet had on the global economy, I think the top 10 IT companies, the Facebook, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, they are already worth more than $10 trillion. So the amount of value that will be created in the next 10 years, next 10 to 15 years will be phenomenal, especially with the 3 billion people who are not yet on a part of the internet will also join the internet in the next decade. So this will change everything, and if you've never been on the internet and the first interaction with the internet is the metaverse, that will change how you deal with the metaverse, what you think is normal. We've seen it in Africa with the where they skipped the desktop computing era and they moved straight to mobile. And they came up with all kinds of mobile applications that we can't even dream of almost. They had mobile applications on old Nokias, for that matter. They were transferring phone credits with their old Nokia phones to as a sort of a early crypto system, almost you could say, to transfer money using phone credits, because they just looked at it from a completely different perspective. So now imagine the 3 billion people who come online in the next decade, and the first interaction with the internet is an immersive internet. They will have a completely different perspective of it. Especially the same applies for the generation alpha. They are, for them, collaborative strategy making in a game-like environment is daily practice almost, because that's what they do on Fortnite. That's what they do on Roblox. So that. For us, you and I are dinosaurs, are old, from that perspective, and it will become very difficult to stay up to date and to stay relevant. But yeah, it's only going faster.
I think that's one thing that's a given. It's going faster. I mean, some of the stuff you mentioned, the holograms. I mean, there's a company called Here We Holo in the Netherlands that already offer holograms in the box, basically, and they can put a few boxes around the room, and you can already have your people there. You can easily get a smaller one and people sitting at the desk. It's already happening. The other thing that I thought was interesting is talking about decentralization. In the Netherlands, the power grid is not strong enough anymore to, at the moment, to handle all the electricity that's currently coming into it. Especially if we start putting some sort of like solar cells on everybody's roofs and putting up windmills everywhere, which the Netherlands is known for, but putting windmills out in the North Sea or on farmland. And so the local grid is not strong enough. So one of the things they're working on is providing local electricity in a local way. So you basically take all the roofs in the neighborhood and they all deliver electricity in that neighborhood, not across the bigger grid. And I'm just wondering, to what extent will we still have this locality versus internationality within the metaverse? For instance, you're talking about M-Pesa and paying across borders in South Africa. One of the things is, in Africa, you have a village on one side of the border in one country, but they actually pay for stuff in a border, and on the other side of the border, go to the market.
Yeah.
And they're still doing these digital transactions. I mean, it's with WAP technology. It's really old technology. We don't even use that in Europe and the US anymore, but it works there. And it's new, innovative ways working with what you have. So in a metaverse where some people are digital dinosaurs, others are digital natives, and on the other side, where people have amazing holographic features that can afford the latest day technology, and other people have a limited experience. What do you think? Will that be sort of a way in which we will make the world more equal, or will inequality skyrocket?
It can go both ways, and it's almost a philosophical debate of how this will change the way we organize society. And from economic equality or economic inequality, it can go two ways. If we create an open metaverse, then the likelihood that the trillions of dollars will not end up in the hands of a few, but will be divided across all the different players around the metaverse. If it's If it's a closed metaverse, it will end up in the hands of a few, and it's basically the extrapolation of what we have today with Web two. At the same time, of course, we have the equipment. Just like in today's world, we have Apple's and Android. Apple is very expensive. Android, or even all the other brands are cheaper, and that will have an effect as well, because Apple is generally more privacy sensitive, cares more for your privacy than Google does, and with Android. So there might be a divide. So if you can afford the expensive gadgets, you will have more privacy. Maybe it's very well possible. And that if you're poor, you have to use the free services, and it means that you have to give away your data in order to do so. Well, the rich people can pay for these services so that the data is not being used. That's a direction that we can go. The world is unequal. The world is unfair, unfortunately. But and that will also happen in the metaverse. So some people have the fanciest gadgets that you can imagine, and others, won't. Some people will be able to teleport between worlds and not have to walk, for that matter. And that's what that will happen.
I think we also, one of the things that we're talking about this metaverse, we're talking about the digital world, and we're talking about, so connectivity is going to be a requirement, more satellites and or more cable connections with countries that currently do not have the ability to transfer large chunks of data. All the infrastructure will have to be upgraded, otherwise you'll anyway have a limited experience. So that's what I was thinking, local versus international. To what extent can you do that if you do not have access? I'm just wondering what the impact would be on things like healthcare with potential mental health issues. How will we ensure people that acquire digital illnesses?
Another good point. Yeah, we already see it already happens that people die by playing a game for 17 hours, 20 hours in a row. So that happens already. And if the metaverse becomes this amazing world where you can have all these magical experiences, there will be people who prefer the virtual world above the physical world. I think it would be terribly sad if that would happen, but it will happen for sure. People get addicted to all kinds of stuff. So if you have this unlimited magical world where you don't even need ecstasy or LSD or whatever drugs you can imagine, because you just put on your headset and you can have this experience, people will fall for that. And what's the best solution for that? I'm not sure. Education would help. But do we want the government to step in and say you are only allowed to play maximum 5 hours a day? Something that's happening in China at the moment. I don't think that's something we would want. Do we want the corporates to say you can only play for 5 hours a day, and if you've played more than 5 hours, that's not going to. We will switch you off for today. There's also some responsibility for us as consumers, and what should we do, and how should we go about that, and what should when the first person dying in the metaverse, literally, well, not dying in the metaverse, but dying because of spending too much time in the metaverse, dying in the physical world, I think that will be a wake up call for people like, oh wait, what are we doing here, and hopefully we are able to get to get together and to get our act together beforehand, so we develop the mechanisms to avoid that. I can imagine maybe a small warning. You've been playing now for 5 hours. Maybe you want to take a break for go for a walk. Or what Nike actually is doing quite well is they for a trial they combined the physical with the digital. So if you were playing, I think it was an NFL game on EA games, and you would connect your I don't have the exact details, but you connect your Nike app. If you would go for a 5 mile run and you would beat your opponent, you would be able to walk faster in the digital world. So your digital character would get perks. And that's brilliant, because then you sort of engage people in a very natural way to do stuff in the physical world. A fantastic example of how you can combine these two worlds, and also how you can help people take a break from playing 5 hours in a row.
I was just thinking, if we can escape to this virtual world, to escape a world that we might live in, So I can imagine it for people that are in environments that are really tough or difficult. But what if this becomes something that we want to escape to because we've screwed up our own world so much? Yeah. With climate, will we then really care about climate change if we can still see blue skies in the digital world?
Well, then we'll live in the matrix soon enough. So, and I certainly hope not that will end up like that. I think that would be terrible. I think the physical world is way too beautiful. Although that might be a simulation as well, for all we know it. But that's a different philosophical question, debate. But I think that would be very sad if we would end up like that. And the movie Ready Player One from the book Ready Player One, of course, shows that that's sort of the reality where people live in, and they live in terrible physical lives. So everyone escapes to the virtual world. I think if we end up like that, I think we have a serious problem as humanity, and we're sort of digging our own grave as humanity. And I hope not that will end up like that. It's not a guarantee, by the way, that we'll not end up like that. It's maybe even highly likely the way we are progressing at the moment, and all the stuff that's happening in the world. So there's no guarantee that we'll end up in a utopian. It might very well be a dystopian world.
I think obviously we still need the physical world. We still need to produce food. We need some way of getting sustenance. Um, I'm wondering if we will get to a time where we can actually turn the metaverse around and use inputs from the metaverse to stimulate our body. I mean, we'll really have things like pressure sensors that we can do that with. But I'm wondering, will that happen to tastes? Will I eat cardboard basically, but it will taste good because I'm sitting in the metaverse when I'm eating?
It could very well be. Might very well be. It's a crazy world out there, you know. I was reading an article in the FD, the Dutch Financial Times, a couple of weeks ago, where they interviewed a Spanish artist, and she had implanted sensors in her legs, and she was able, for 7 years long, she was able to feel the tremors of the earth. Every earthquake in the world, she was connected to every earthquake in the world. So she connected her senses to the seismographs all around the world. So every little earthquake, no matter how small, she would feel in her legs. So she felt the earth as an additional sense in her body. Total mind blowing for me, but that's the possibility. We could do those kind of things nowadays.
Hmm.
At some point, you could add a bionic eye and see infrared, for that matter, if you want to do that. Or radar or whatever, you know. It's all
Hmm.
possible. The technology is there, and if we can teach a monkey to play ping pong with its mind, which Neuralink has done, in 2021, imagine 10, 20, 30 years from now, in 2050, when all these technologies are miniaturized, when we won't have phones anymore, we won't have laptops anymore, we'll have glasses or maybe even lenses, more likely, and we'll have an implant in our brain, and it will beam the metaverse straight into our brains. I can see what you see. For example, I can hear what you hear, because it's beamed straight into our brains. We don't have to talk
Hmm.
anymore because we can beam our thoughts over the internet. Is it all good? I don't know, but
Hmm.
we will end up there unless we screw up the world beforehand. But as long as we continue building the technology, and the convergence of the technologies, these kind of things, these scenarios will happen eventually.
Hmm. I think it's an interesting question to ponder. Then, if you, I mean, one of the things that recently came to my attention is somebody approached me, and when it comes to coaching, for instance, and therapy, is a device that you put in your head. It's about $300, and it basically scans your brain activity. And part of that is an AI that runs over that to see what the emotions are, or not emotions per se, but which part of the brain lights up to see when you're triggered negatively or when you're triggered positively. So sort of looking at areas of concern and that therapy might help with or coaching might help with. I think it's very interesting. I'm also thinking the other side is, what is that? Where does that fit into my data?
Very good question. And if that data can, if those thoughts can then be influenced subconsciously, what does that do to your free will? Does free will actually exist then? Because we are being influenced already today with all the recommendation engines, recommendation algorithms, etc. But if we take that a step further to the level that you're just describing, if I can have an effect, if I can use that data to stimulate you subconsciously, where you don't even notice it, does free will then exist? Yeah, very, very important questions to consider.
I'm wondering if you will get headsets where that will be built in, so that when you join a company, you get your VR headset and it has it built in. And now the company has access to all their data. To what extent can they stimulate or
That
overstimulate
would
you
be very
to
scary.
be as productive as you want to be?
Then we, yeah,
I mean, there's already companies. There are companies in the US already that give you a tag to basically track where you're sitting, when you're working, when you're not. There's stuff like that happening in China as well, and it's really scary. And with AI, to what extent are our transactional world still going to be relevant if AI can pick up a lot of the work that we now do in transactional elements? So stuff where it's not team activities, so things where multiple people band together to deliver something amazing or creative or humane in a way. I'm just wondering how quickly will we become irrelevant in a metaverse if there's enough data tracking that happens and then the AI can learn fast enough.
very good question. But I do think by the time we reach a metaverse like that, we'll probably already have super artificial intelligence, which I believe is a possibility in the future. And then we either are already screwed as humanity, or we live in a utopian. They're sort of really the two options. So then it doesn't matter anymore, because either we solve that issue, or it's all over already anyhow. So I guess by the time we end up in that scenario, we've probably screwed up, and then we are in trouble anyway.
I must say, there's also stuff that I'm looking forward to. As a speaker, you and I both come from the speaking community, and I can just imagine the stuff that you're currently doing with turning your body into a virtual avatar. And I'm just thinking, I'm not so worried about that, right? Yes, okay, that's nice. But I want to be able to create a magical environment. I want to go, my presentation is 3D. I don't want to have a PowerPoint presentation. I want to be able to go like, and ladies and gentlemen, here, and just push it into the crowd, and everybody receives a little flower with a scent in it that goes like, and this flower is currently endangered in the Amazon jungle. Sort of that level of interactivity and sensory stimulation. That is the stuff that I'm looking forward to go give people that experience of something instead of just something they listen to.
Yeah, I would love to do that as well. I think that would be absolutely fantastic. Or have a conversation with my digital twin on stage. I think that would be cool.
But you were part of a TED Talk last year.
Yes,
That was mainly virtual, wasn't
I
it?
delivered the world's first virtual reality TEDx talk, which was really cool. And it was 2020, October 2020, and it was a great experience to deliver a TEDx talk, and to do so in virtual reality, and be able to um, uh, present that in on the famous red dot, but then in the virtual world. And I delivered a talk about digitalism, which is all about this stuff, which I thought was very topical to talk about digital stuff in a digital world. So it's we are slowly moving to that direction. With these holographic projections, these boxes that you already have, it's becoming more and more advanced. And at some point, we'll be able to have truly holographic projections, then the whole entire new world will open up of possibilities. And I'd love to be part of that, and deliver a magical experience myself as well.
What would be the first thing you would like to bring into that digital world as part of a speech?
Well, as I said, I think it would be cool to have a conversation with myself, just for the sake of it, to show what's possible. Ideally, with an AI that is able to respond to me, so not recorded, but having a real life conversation. I think that would be very scary, but also sort of a cool experience to show what's possible. And then who's who? Who's the real Mark? Is sort of the question that you can get, because if the AI is built on all my knowledge, then to what extent is the AI a copy of me? If the AI can also appear as a holographic projection on stage and looks like me and moves like me and has the same non-verbal expression, thinks like me, knows the same contents, knows the same stuff as me, who's who then? That's very scary.
What are you looking forward to in interactions with people in this new world?
Oh, I really hope we can still have real deep conversations. Ideally, around a nice fire with a good glass of wine and a nice board of cheeses, and have physical conversations together, and have deep conversations about whatever topic. That's what I hope that will still be part of it, and that that's something I really enjoy.
I think I agree with you, but for me, I think it's my mother. Because she's in South Africa, we only get to talk on the phone and with video chat. It would be really nice to just have her sit in my living room, or take her with me on a walk through Amsterdam. Even if it's a virtual Amsterdam, and just show her the sights and the interesting parts of society and culture. And I'm wondering how much good will we also get from this? What kind of wonderful experiences and new human experiences and beauty, at the same time, how wonderfully our minds will adapt and make this into a place that could be the magical world you were referring to earlier.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, I would like to thank you for your time and for spending it with me. I know it's quite late for you in Australia, so have a nice evening or night and go sleep.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure talking about this. And it's an interesting conversation. There's so much happening here, so we should certainly catch up pretty soon again.
I think what really fascinated me in this discussion about the metaverse is the identity element. As Mark says, what if you were a purple flying Pegasus? But what if you're a white unicorn? What if you're a multicolored rainbow? What will it do to the way that we obscure or obfuscate who we really are and think? Or to what extent will it allow us to be our true selves? What if that glint in someone's eye is actually the light of interrogation? What if it is an AI analyzing the way that we think and feel by looking at our micro expressions? What would AI bots be like? To what extent will they become very human-like? What could that mean for people that are lonely? For people and the developmental cycle of our brains, could we also use it for the positive? Could we have a mental health professional, AI, that's indistinguishable from a human online? What will be your digital shape? What will be your digital persona? And what will be your way of looking at the world when it has a 3D digital lifelike filter? Can you see yourself doing that company presentation and just grabbing the presentation out of the air and sharing it? Or walk through the forest in the Amazon and show people around the world how the forest is being impacted, deforested and lost? What if now, when we are in this war in Europe, it could take us there, into the midst of it? And what if those people that would cause harm can experience the pain they cause by seeing it right in front of them and not being a million miles away? I think it's going to be interesting how the metaverse affects our world. And we're in for exciting times. And as technology just snowballs and becomes bigger and faster, how do we distinguish our real world from the metaverse? And to what extent will that be important? Well, I can tell you one thing. I would lose 10 kilos in an afternoon or in a split second. Well, what would your dream be in a digital world? Now go out there, be exponential, and do something nice for someone else. You can find us on the web by going to podcast.exponentially.me. We will also find additional media resources and some amazing insights.